And so it's time to get started. How's everybody doing? How many of you, when you got to this conference, not counting what you've attended in the last couple of days, but when you got to this conference, thought to yourself, you know what? I really don't know anything about generative AI, but I would really like to learn some generative AI stuff. How many would raise your hand on that? Okay, that's most of you. How many are the opposite of that? You got here and you're thinking, I'm an expert in generative AI, and I'm not going to learn anything, so I'm going to be there and heckle everybody. Anybody? Yeah, I saw these two. I expected that. So that's good. Okay. That's kind of what I thought. So here's the thing. I'm going to help you learn a little bit about generative AI. I'm going to do that in the context of spring. But before we do that, I'm going to run a couple of experiments. And I've warned a few of you about this already, although you don't know what you're doing yet. How many of you, I need to know this. This is going to actually help with one of these experiments. How many of you are from, have been to, or know someone from Texas? All right, that's a good number of you. So I'm expecting you to help me with one of these things because you know how to do this. Everybody else probably does too, or at least a good chunk of you do. But you, I know how to do this because I lived in Texas for a while. I witnessed this in the wild, and it actually happens. So we're going to try something. Okay, first of all, another thing. How many of you have ever watched, I don't think it's on anymore, but it was a very short-lived TV game show thing called Don't Forget the Lyrics. Anybody remember this show? Where they would play a few lyrics from a song, and then it would stop, and the participant would have to finish the lyrics. Anybody remember this show? All right, even if you don't, that's the gist of it, okay? And so for the purpose of this, you, and I mean by you, I mean all of you, you are contestants on Don't Forget the Lyrics. I am going to do a horrible job singing some lyrics, and you're going to finish them for me all together, okay? I need help with this. This isn't going to work if everybody's quiet, okay? All right, and I know in a room this size, there has to be at least a few extroverts out there, okay? So you've got to do this and make up for everybody else who's quiet. I'm an introvert. I get this. It's going to be hard for me because I'm going to be doing this by myself. You're going to do your part together. Okay, so we're going to start off simple, and there's a point to this. I assure you there's a point to this. We're going to start off simple. In fact, it's going to be child's play. Are you ready? We're going to start off something very simple. I think everybody can do this. Okay, here we go. Ready? When I point to you, you finish the lyrics. Old MacDonald had a farm. That's great. It worked. It actually worked better than I thought it would. Okay, let's try another one. Who's the leader of the club that's made for you and me? All right, great. Now we're going to try another one. It's going to get a little bit more advanced, but I think you can do this. Oh, we're halfway there. Okay, I need better out of you the next one. I want people in the hallway to wonder why they're not in here yet, okay? All right, I'm going to try another one. Let's see. What's the next one I was going to do? I totally forgot already. Oh, yeah. I want to rock and roll all night. All right, and finally, the ones for the Texas folks. Are you ready? You got this? Let me think. I got to remember what the lyrics are. Hold on. I'm not big into social graces. Think I'll head on down to the... Oh, that's disappointing. No, I've been in restaurants in Texas where that's playing on the overhead or the jukebox or whatever. And I kid you not, every single person in the restaurant yells Oasis at the top of their lungs. So let's try that again. Think I'll head on down to the... Okay, that's better. Okay. All right. You just played the part of a generative AI. That's essentially how this thing works. Why did you pick those lyrics? Because you know those lyrics, right? Why did you pick them? Is it just because you were trained on those lyrics? You completed something. I gave you a statement and you completed it. That is generative AI in a nutshell. Generative AI is just one facet of artificial intelligence. Just one piece of the whole big puzzle. There's a whole bunch of things in artificial intelligence that are super interesting. Some of it super complicated, and yet you understand generative AI. You were just able to do this. And in fact, I prompted you, I'm choosing my words carefully, I prompted you with some lyrics, and you completed those lyrics. That's the notion of generative AI. Prompting and completion. Cool. Now let me try another one. It's not going to be lyrics. It's going to be something simple. I'm going to ask a question. I want at least, there's got to be at least 3 people who have an answer for this, okay? So let's see what we can do. If I ask you, what is Pandora? Okay, what do we got back here? I got 2 hands. Pick one of you. I don't care. I'm sorry? Music app. Okay, that's great. Let me ask again. What is Pandora? It's a box. Oh, yeah, I didn't even think of that category of it. Yes, I was thinking of something else. But yes, you're right. Okay. It's a jewelry brand. What else? I'm sorry, I heard a lot of things. I don't know about that. But yeah, maybe. Okay. It's a planet with blue people from the Avatar movies. How many of those answers were wrong? How many were 100% right? You don't know. You don't know the context. You don't know what I was talking about. And how many of you in your head answered one of those questions with one of those answers, but you were thinking of the other ones? Anybody? It's ambiguous, right? I didn't give any context. That's the other problem with generative AI is without context, you don't know what you're talking about. And the problem is you've been trained on too many things about Pandora. Even the word avatar, I can think of several meanings. Even in the context of movies and entertainment, I can think of 2 avatars, okay? And so you're trained on too many things. And this is what we tend to call, even though I hate the word, I'm going to have to use it because it's what everybody else uses, the word hallucination. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, what generative AI is really good at is completing something in a way that sounds like it knows what it's talking about. And it's also really bad at completing things in a way that it sounds like it knows what it's talking about. Because it's trained on so much information, and it statistically comes up with what it thinks is supposed to follow the next thing after that. Well, that's generative AI in a nutshell. I could give you a more detailed, but that's something to kind of base all this on as we move forward. So this is our introduction to Spring AI. This is who I am. This is where you can follow me on all the various social medias. And yes, I did fix the typo in there. That's good. This is my website, habuma.com. If you catch nothing else on this slide, you can go there. And it's going to have all my social media stuff, some links to videos and whatnot. The only thing that you won't find there is my email address. By all means, I love talking about generative AI. I love talking about Spring AI. I also like talking about Spring and Spring Boot and developing for Alexa and all sorts of other cool things. If you're interested in any of those things, email me and I'll do my best to get back with you. But you're not going to find my email address on my website because I'm not stupid. And I don't want people scraping it and signing me up for emailing lists. All right. Put it in perspective, I like to go through these quickly. I am a Java developer. I've been developing Java since it was Java 1.02 and Duke was like a little guitar pick rolling across the screen on browsers. But I've been a Java champion for the last few years. I am a Spring developer. I've been on the Spring engineering team since 2010. So I'm going on 14 years in May. Next month, it'll be 14 years that I've been on the Spring team. And I am also an Alexa developer. I love developing voice applications, not just for Alexa, but I like the concept of voice experiences. And I've been considered an Alexa champion since 2023. All this together feeds into my interest in generative AI and Spring AI, because I think I can do all these things I just talked about here with Spring AI. But maybe you've heard about this. We've already talked about it, but maybe you've heard about this thing called generative AI and large language models, right? Anybody here not heard about that? Anybody missed my don't forget the lyrics thing? Okay. You've heard about this. It's in the news. People talk about it. I don't think there's been any discussions about it at this conference until now. But yeah, you've probably heard about it. And you know that they can answer any question. They can do any task. They can do anything you submit to them. But the answer or the results might not be that great. Again, that's where the hallucinations come in. And there are ways to rein that in. At the end of the day, though, generative AI is just an API call. All of these things that we're doing are just API calls. And so don't be intimidated by it. Anybody made an API call before? Anybody ever done that? Use curl? Anybody use HTTP-IE? If you're a Spring developer, use REST template, REST client, things like that. You've made API calls. This is just an API call at the end of the day, which makes it easy when you think about it. It could be done with REST template and REST client. It could be done with Spring AI, though. And what Spring AI affords you is the ability to work with these different AI clients without knowing about how to work with these different AI clients, or these AI services without knowing the specifics of them and knowing how to work with them. It abstracts some of that stuff away, so you don't have to know how to structure up your request. You don't have to know how to parse the response. You let Spring AI deal with that for you. And what's also, and I'm going to show this a little bit to some degree, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, to some degree, for comparison's sake, how many of you used Spring Data before? Anybody use Spring Data? Awesome, I love that a lot of hands went up for that. When you use Spring Data, if you used it with JPA, or you used it with Mongo, or you used it with Neo4j, or you used it with Redis, or you used it with whatever, right? What was different between those? Not much. You wrote an interface. You extended CRUD repository. You might have made a few decisions differently in how you modeled your data, depending on what kind of database was under the covers, but how you did it, ultimately, how you wrote the code was exactly the same, regardless of what kind of the underlying database it was. Your dependency was different. You had a different dependency in your build. You may have had different properties in your configuration, but the interface you wrote, your repository interface, was probably not much different regardless of which one of those underlying databases you were using. Spring AI does the same thing. If you're using OpenAI, if you're using Anthropic, if you're using Mistral, if you're using Gemini, whatever, it's the same code for the most part. Just a dependency change, just some property changes, but that's it. Now, warning, Spring AI is still pre 1.0. It's currently 1.0.0 snapshot. The current live I say GA, it's not really GA, it's a milestone release, but the current stable release, the one that's not going to change, that's not a snapshot, is 0.8.1. Supposedly, 1.0 milestone 1 is going to come out Monday. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I can say with a great deal of confidence that the Spring AI team is really good about slipping dates. They've been consistently doing so. I also have reason to believe that I just can't go into that they're going to be more consistent about making dates. So I don't know what's going to happen on Monday, but stay tuned. We'll see. Place your bets now. All right. So anything I show you might change between now and 1.0. So what does Spring AI offer? Well, it offers text-based generative AI, which of course is the thing that most people get started with generative AI, at least developers do. I mean, the mass markets, they probably are more interested in image generation because that's fun. But text-based generative AI, so you send in some text, you get some text back. And it does this with a lot of, and I need to update this slide, but it does this with a lot of different underlying providers, including the ones you see here, plus some that you don't see here, because since then they've added direct access to Anthropic's service, direct access to Mistral, direct access to a few others. And you pick which ones are available and which one you want to use. You make your decision based on what they can do, how good they are, how fast they are, whether they, how accurate they are, their pricing. Good news is the pricing on all of these is, when you're doing the pay-as-you-go model, they're mostly the same, real close to each other. And if you're worried about breaking the bank and you're worried about going broke because you signed up for one of these services, don't. I gave $10 to OpenAI in September. I still have $4 left, and I'm doing this stuff all the time. Now, I am very judicious about which model I use. I'm not using GPT-4 every day. I'm using GPT-3.5 Turbo, which is a lot cheaper, but like an order of magnitude cheaper than than GPT-4. But I still do this pretty much every day, and I've only burned through $6 in September. I also use Ollama a lot. Ollama is a great option for running locally on your local machine. The models you get are some pretty good open source models that you can run locally on your machine. The downside of Ollama is your choices, while they're great, are not always perfect. And secondly, it kind of requires the response time will vary depending on how good your machine is and which model you pick. So, but you can still do that for free. It won't cost you anything. You can run it locally. And I see a hand way back here. Can you? Yes, you can. Well, no, let me take that back. I don't know. The Hugging Face support that Spring AI has is actually for Hugging Face service, not for local ones. But there is, no, I'm going to say no, although I could be wrong, that you can't. There is a support for a transformers, which my understanding was maybe you could actually run a transformer locally and use it. But the more I think about it, I remember that transformer support was largely just for embedding models, not for anything else. So, but yeah, but it's great. The Ollama ones. I've used, and you're going to see me do this today. I used Mistral and I've used Gemma on Ollama, and they're pretty good. They're not great. They give me some mixed results sometimes, but they're pretty good. I've used Gemma's 2B and the 7B models locally. 2B is not horrible. It's also not great. It's always in its responses. 7B is pretty rock solid as far as its responses are, if I'm willing to wait about a minute. So your mileage will vary. Get a better machine. My machine's 4 years old. If everybody wants to donate $1, I'll get a new machine later. So, all right.
So is it true that Ollama you can run without having your information jacked?
That's true, because it goes nowhere. It doesn't leave your machine. Yeah, you can talk to Ollama all you want. It never leaves your machine. So yeah, that's the other benefit of it. Yeah, but again, the trade-off is you got a mixed bag of models, and you got to wonder about whether you got enough hardware to support that, especially in a production scenario. So, all right. It also supports prompt templates. Now, this doesn't seem on the surface like a big deal, but it kind of is. It kind of is an awesome deal. It now enables you to create and describe your prompts separate from your code. And it's just as big a deal to me as if you were writing a servlet versus a web application with JSP or Timeleaf. Who here has ever written a servlet that emits HTML directly with string concatenation or some nonsense like that? Okay, keep your hands up for now. Keep your hands up if you've done that. Now put them down if you don't do that anymore. Yeah, no hands are still up. Please don't do. And if you still do that, I understand why you put your hands down. That's embarrassing. I wouldn't do that either. Prompt templates are the same idea. Don't mix your prompts inside your code, hard coding them, unless they're just something simple. It's nice to extract those things out. Output parsers. And we're going to talk a little bit about this a little bit later on, but the idea is the other end of the picture, where you're getting some data back, you're getting some answer back from an LLM query, and the thing you're wanting to do is not just emit the string or something like that. You want to format it and put it into a Java object. You want to bind it to some object so you can process it or write it to a database or do something with it. I don't know what you want to do with it, but you don't want just the string. And so output parsers help you with that. It helps you in two ways. First off, they help by informing the prompt about what the format should look like. Secondly, assuming that the LLM does respond correctly and give you the right format back, it binds whatever it is into an object for you, and you just sort of don't have to worry about that. It just works. What if it doesn't? Yeah, that's the gotcha. It usually does. And it depends on the model. I've actually had pretty good luck with OpenAI and some others. I've had mixed results with Mistral. So then I keep retrying, or I pick a different model. Yeah, you have to. It's not that hard to retry. You could always catch the exception. You could use something like Spring retry and keep trying it and then give up after a while. But say again.
You could consider giving a different form the second time.
Yeah, but it still doesn't honor that. I'll be honest with you. A few months ago, it hasn't happened in a while, but not about format, but it kind of a similar problem, is I kept asking it questions, and it was OpenAI doing this, and I kept asking it questions in a chat, and it would say, come back with an answer, and it would come back with an answer, and then all of a sudden it started And I'm talking about Chat GPT. I'm talking about OpenAI's GPT in a code I wrote in a chat scenario. And all of a sudden, it started answering me in Spanish. I never told it to answer in Spanish. And then all of a sudden, it started switching to French. And I'm like, okay, I never told you to switch to French. And I started putting in my prompt explicitly, only answer in English. Still didn't honor it. So I mean, there's some imperfection about that, but usually it works. And there's output parsers that can bind to beans, to lists, and to maps. I'm going to show you the bean example today, but you can also, if you have a list of data coming back or a map, you can bind it to those. Document readers. Now these are pretty awesome. These come in handy when you're doing something called RAG. Anybody heard of RAG? It's not the name of the dog that my grandparents had when I was little. RAGs. It is retrieval augmented generation. It is a means by which you can provide context, additional information in a prompt to the LLM. And document readers help you read documents, load them into a vector store, among other things you can do with them. But there's document reader support in Spring AI for reading text files, JSON files, PDF, and my favorite, Tika. It uses Apache Tika to do the reading. And the reason I like Tika is because Tika can read almost anything. It can read PDFs and text files just as easily as it can read Word documents. In fact, if you go look at the Apache Tika website, they claim to be able to read all sorts of things and give you text. I've not been entirely successful with all of those, but it's pretty good at a lot of them. So I like Tika for that reason. The other ones are just, they're sort of like cheaper versions of what Tika can do. And then vector stores. This goes back to the whole RAG thing again. Vector stores, we'll talk more about them in a moment, but the idea here is before you go and submit a document as context to an LLM to ask a question about it, maybe you want to store this stuff in a vector store so you don't have to keep embedding it keep creating the embeddings for it all the time, so you don't have to keep you don't have to submit the whole document. You can submit bits and pieces of the document. And vector stores are great for that. And Spring AI has great support for all kinds of vector stores, including a simple one, which I am going to use today. I was going to use Chroma, but for reasons I backed out on that plan. I won't go into why. But simple, ChromaDB, Pinecone, Redis, Milvus, Weaviate, Postgres, or PG Vector. Azure has one as well, and then Neo4j, and there's a few others that I'm just totally blanking on right now that exist as well, that have been added more recently. And then, yeah, but what kind of problems can I solve with this? And I don't know, but I can talk about a few of them. You can certainly do simple Q&A. That's the most common thing that and it's what we're gonna do today. We don't have time to build a super awesome, amazing, incredible application today, but we can definitely do simple Q&A. You can do simple Q&A again, because I forgot to remove that slide. You can do conversational or chat Q&A, where it's not just a one-off question. I ask you a question, you give me an answer, and we sort of forget we ever talked. We can do conversational Q&A, where we remember what we just said to each other. And if I use a pronoun like it or that, it knows what we're talking about because there's some context to draw from to figure that out. There's RAG again. You can ask questions about your documents. I'm going to show you a fun little example of that. And then, let's see, what else do I have in slide-wise? I forgot what I'm talking about. You can ask questions about your data. I'm not going to show you an example of this, but it's actually pretty cool. You can do, you can send questions, and I say questions. I use the word questions loosely to mean anything I send to the LLM, even though it may not be a question. It could be just a prompt or a statement to say, an instruction to tell it to do something. And so I could send it about your data. That could be a API, it could be a function. In the case of Spring AI, right now there's support in there for what they call functions. It essentially calls a Java util function.function implementation that's a bean in your application context. And it knows how to call that based on whatever the question or the statement was. It makes a decision that says, yeah, I can answer this question if I could only call that first. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. But you can also, it doesn't matter what that function does. I say ask questions about your data. You could also have it do something. It doesn't have to give data back. It could also, in the course of doing that, turn a light on or cancel an order or whatever you want it to do. So let's see some demos. Let's do the simplest one. And Spring AI in Action. That sounds like a good title for a book, doesn't it? Man, somebody should write a book like that. Hint, hint. All right, let's create a simple example. Because this is a live example, and because I have so many eyes on me, mistakes are going to be made. I promise mistakes will be made, but we'll try. We'll try to do our best. We're going to call this, you know what I'm going to call this? I'm going to call this Devnexus. I don't know why it's in an UberConf folder, but Devnexus Spring AI. We'll call it that. That's a good answer. If you can't see this, if you need me to zoom in, that's cool. I'll get to that in a minute. Right now, I am going to pick, among other things, Spring Web, and I'm going to pick, tell you what, I'm going to pick Olama to start with. Okay? I'm just going to let that spin for a minute. It's going to come up, and we're going to zoom in as best as I can in a moment. Hold on, let me close a few things I don't care to look at. Make this bigger. You know, interestingly enough, sometimes when I hook up to these projectors, it zooms in for me, but now today it's not, and so I'm not prepared for that. Let's see, what can we do? I'm going to create a couple simple components here. I'm going to create one called question, and it's going to seem dumb what I'm doing, but just bear with me. And it's going to be a record. It's also hard to do this because my machine is tilted at a weird angle on this podium. Here. Let me zoom in on that for you. String, question, and it's just going to be a record. If you don't know what a record is, well, that's something you should look into. They're pretty awesome. They're like Lombok without Lombok, in a way. So. All right, so there you go. There's my answer. And it's dumb that I'm wrapping them in these, kind of, but I'm going to, there's reasons I'm choosing to do this, because I might make this more complicated later. But for now, we're just going to go with those. So we've got an answer, a wrapper for a string with an answer, and a wrapper for the question. I'm going to put an ask controller in here. And my ask controller is going to be just a simple Spring REST controller. I could put a nice UI in front of this. I could use whatever JavaScript framework seems to be popular at the time to do that, but I'm just going to just call it from the command line. I'm going to say, I'm going to do a post mapping, and from my post mapping, it's going to handle requests for ask. I'm going to return an answer for a question, and the answer is not going to be I don't know, although I could stop there. That would be really cool, but I'm not going to do that. If this was a Spring Boot talk, maybe that's what I would do, just so we could talk more about how that works, but we got to keep going. So I'm going to put in a chat client. Now, chat client is something that Spring AI provides, and what's really cool about chat client is that chat client is an interface that is implemented by OpenAI with an Olama implementation, with a Mistral implementation, with Anthropic implementations. And so you don't have to worry about what type it is. This is what makes it possible to write the same code that works with all of these different models. You just work through chat client. Now, I've seen a few people do demos and do examples. In fact, I won't mention his name. He's not here this week, but I won't mention his name. I saw him do a talk a few weeks ago online, and he used an actual Azure OpenAI chat client. And I saw that during his talk, and I couldn't hear anything else he said after that, because I'm like, why is he doing that? And I actually emailed him later on. He said, oh yeah, in my talk later on, I do some stuff that kind of requires me to have the actual implementation. He says, but that talk was so short, I didn't get around to it. So he says, no, that's insane. I shouldn't have done that. So I was still right. You shouldn't have done that. But he had a reason, apparently, if the talk was longer. So I'm going to say, okay, chat client, I'm going to say not call. They keep changing the method name on this, but I think we're stuck with call now. I think that's what we're going with. And I'm going to pass in question. Question. I'm going to get the question out of it. I'm going to return new answer. I'm just going to throw that in there. I'm going to get rid of this one. And there, I just wrote a Spring AI app. Yay! Let's run it and hope it works. Because I haven't proven that it worked yet. In fact, I'm sitting here thinking right now, I can think of one reason it wouldn't work. But let's try it anyway. How do you know which? How do you know? That's actually why I think it won't work, because I didn't tell it. I'll show you in a second. But let's just see what happens. Honestly, I'm kind of curious. I want to know what happens. So I'm going to give myself a window with I'm going to ask a question. There's a question I'm required by law. You know, you're required by law in 48 of the 50 states to do a hello world example in your talks. When it's an AI talk, you're required to ask one of two things: either tell me a joke or why is the sky blue. Those are the two you have. You got your choice. It's a little more flexible, but you have to do one of those. So I'm going to say 8080 ask question equal why is the sky blue? And I'd be very disappointed if it didn't give me an answer with Rayleigh scattering in it. So it's going to take a minute. Where's it going? Who's it asking? And it gave back an answer of empty string. That is shocking to me that it gave me an empty string. That is completely, there's two things I was expecting, either an error or an answer, and it gave me nothing. That's weird. Okay, let's do something. Let's see if I can make it a little bit better. Let's go set the model. So spring.ai.olama.chat model. I'm using Olama under the covers because I use the Olama dependency. I'm going to tell it not to use the Devnexus Spring AI model because that doesn't even exist. I don't know where it came up with that. But we're going to use, let's use Mistral. Let's make sure I got the right one. Where's my window? I'm going to say Olama, LS. I have these models installed, so latest or 7B, either way is going to get us there. All right, so 7B, there we go. That's how you specify the model that I'm using. Now, of course, when you use Olama, I'm going to leave it up to you to learn how to use Olama. When you use Olama, you have to actually install models. You have to say Olama, like get or fetch or download. I don't forget how to use it, but I always have to do this to remember. Pull, that's what you do, pull. That's how you do it. Okay. No, well, actually, I don't know how it works. I think it might be, yeah. Okay, well, it came back faster. That's something. I'm confused now. Why is that not working? Why is it not doing anything? Let's see. Maybe I can break this out a little bit. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just jump to the chase. In the interest of time, let's make it work by not using Olama right now. Or at least in theory, let's make it work by not using Olama. Let's switch over, because my code's not going to change much, right? Let's switch over to use OpenAI. And that's all I had to change. And then, of course, I'm going to tell the IDE to refresh its dependencies. And then I have to do one other thing up here. I have to specify my OpenAI API key. So everybody close your eyes while I type my API key. Or I can do this. And because I already have it as an environment variable, and so we're all good. Now, if this doesn't work, I'm surprised, because I've actually been tinkering with this, almost the same example all morning over in the speaker lounge, and it worked every time, with varying degrees of working, but it still worked. And I'm going to be shocked if this doesn't do anything of any value whatsoever. As I said, people are watching me. It's a live demo. Things could go wrong. I did even promise that, so maybe that's the problem. I promised it. I have to fulfill that promise. Well, now I'm getting a weird error. I'm using OpenAI at this point. Invalid input for content. Expected a string. Wow, what the hell is going on? What now? No, it should know it. I'll tell you what, let's back up. Let's do something even simpler than that. Let's call the chat client. Let's get rid of this for a moment. Let's do the simplest thing I can possibly do, and that is say chat client.call hello. There's that hello world example. I mean, you can do that, right? Let's share it to see what it says, and just to return it, just return a new answer of hello, just to kind of see. Because at this point, I got to be honest, I don't know what's wrong with that. That looks. Well, it's possible that's oh, I know exactly why now. I just now remembered why. And Ken's over here nodding his head like it's going to fall off. He knows why too. But we're going to come back. Let's just see this work first, just to prove that there's not something else that I'm missing. And we'll come back to it. I know exactly why. I always forget to do this. But let's just see this happen first. Of course, it's not going to say, why is the sky blue? It's going to say hello if it works. Hello, how can I assist you today? So good. We're in good shape now. I know exactly why. Actually, I was being stupid. And it's not a Spring AI problem. It's a Spring Boot problem, or actually more accurately, a Spring MVC problem. And it's something I keep forgetting to do. request body. So I sent it essentially nothing, and it gave me nothing. So it worked. When you think about it that way, it did what it's supposed to do. All right, let's do a refresh. I saw a hand back here while I'm waiting on it to restart. Anybody? Okay, we'll go on. Cool. Now, let's ask it why the sky's blue. Okay, cool. We should be back on track. Well, lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. The sky appears blue because of blah, 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 blah. Do you see Rayleigh scattering in there? I'm disappointed if it doesn't say it. It doesn't. Scatters, yeah, that's good, but usually you see the Rayleigh thing in there. Okay, well, whatever. It still works, right? Let's do that again, just for grin. Everybody memorize what it says here, okay? Oh, that's a different answer. It's not the same answer. Why? Because it's scattering. No, it's different because generative AI is probabilistic. It is not something you can, it's very non-deterministic. You cannot know for sure what the answer is going to be. You can actually do some testing to determine if the answer you get back is reasonably correct, but you can't determine if it is what exactly word for word what you expected it to come back with. So right there we have a problem. Testing is going to be a challenge for you. There are techniques to help you with that. Again, what you basically do is you take an answer back and you turn around and ask an AI, does this reasonably answer this question? And of course, you're trusting the AI to be correct about that. I'm not going to talk about that in any detail right now. I just wanted to throw that out there for you there are some techniques for testing these things. Spring AI currently has something out there to help you with that, but it's a little not ready for prime time yet. So I don't even want to talk about it yet. Perhaps someday it'll be more fleshed out, and you'll be able to do better testing with this to kind of verify that the results you get back are reasonably correct. Okay, but that's cool. Let's do something a little bit better. Let's ask it. Well, the other thing I have to do. Somebody give me a subject to tell me a joke about something. Come on. I heard racehorses first. I think that's what I heard. If not, then we're going to go with it anyway. Oops, racehorse. Oh, too many quotes. Let's just take that one off. Tell me a joke about racehorses. Why did the racehorse go to the doctor? Because it was feeling a little hoarse. Yeah, that's actually one of the best ones I've got recently. Some of them are really, really crappy, but that one's not bad. So let's try a few other things. Let's tweak this a little bit. I tell you what, let me do something else. Rather than do that, let me do this. I want to ask it a question about a game. So last night, a bunch of us, if I say a bunch of us, like me and like 4 other people, got together, and a whole bunch really, got together at the hotel. We played a game called Burger Battle. Anybody here ever played Burger Battle? Wow, I didn't think so, right? Because not a lot of people know about it. It's not a well-known game. It was a Kickstarter a few years ago. They sort of invigorated it here recently with a new Kickstarter for Burger Battle 2, but it's not well known. If you go out to Board Game Geek, you can look it up and read about it. If you go to burgerbattlegame.com, you can go buy your copy. It's a fun game. It's a lot of fun. But the thing is, nobody knows anything about it. And so if I wanted to build a AI application to ask rules, clarifying questions about Burger Battle, let's see what would happen. So there's a card in Burger Battle called the Burger Force Field. What does the Burger Force Field card do? And let's see what it says. Well, the Burger Force Field card creates a protective barrier around the player's burger. Well, so far that sounds accurate. Preventing opponents from stealing it or causing harm to it. That's sort of true. This allows players to keep their burgers safe and secure until the end of the game. Well, that's actually one of the best answers I've gotten before, straight from the LLM. Let's try it again. I mean, to some degree, that's accurate. I'm a little shocked at how good it was, because usually it makes up crap. It makes up rules for a game that doesn't exist, and you have to help it a little bit. Let's ask it another one. What does the Burger Bomb? I should have taken the word field out there. What does the Burger Bomb do? I still keep typing it with an N. What is wrong with me? There. The burger barm is oh, it has something to do with exploding kittens. No, that's not at all right. I mean, I don't know. I've not played Exploding Kittens. Maybe it is a card in there, but a lot of times when I ask it questions like this, it actually attributes it to Magic the Gathering. So that's weird how it does that, but that's wrong. So let's help it a little bit. Let's give it the rules for Burger Battle. And I'm mashing up two of my examples together just in the interest of time. Over here to the side, I have Burger Battle Rules.txt. So I'm going to just bring those on over here under Resources. Just drop that in there. So Burger Battle Rules. And I'm going to do this, even though I wouldn't recommend you do this necessarily in your code. This is a demo, so I can do whatever the heck I want, right? I would probably extract this off into like a service or something to help kind of manage this and make the code a little bit neater. But just to kind of move us along here, I'm going to say at value. Everybody knows what at value does if you've used Spring before, right? And I'm going to go get something from the class path at /burger battle rules.txt. I'm going to put that into a resource. I'm going to call it BB rules like that. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, all right, BB rules dot get content as string using the default character set. What am I doing wrong? Yeah, there we go. Maybe that's right. No, that's not right. That doesn't look at all like what I started typing last night when I did this. Char set dot. Somebody help me here. Why is it not looking right to me? I have a cheat sheet here, so I can always look and see what I typed last night. When I'm in front of people, the funniest thing is I forget what I'm doing. No, that's not right. Okay. Try one more time. What type does it want? Maybe I'm just not passing in the right type. No, it's Java NIO char set. Okay. Char set dot. I thought there was like a constant in there that would help me with that. What's its complaint? Maybe I'm just not unhandled exception. Oh, so I did it right. I just wasn't dealing with the exception. Throws. I'm just going to throw an exception and just call it good. Again, I don't recommend doing that, but this is a demo. We're short on time. We're going to do it my way, just kind of dumb way right now. So there's my BB rules string, okay? All right, so I've got the rules here. I've just read the rules in, and I'm going to give the LLM an open book exam. So anybody here ever in school, high school, college, whatever, you had an opportunity to take an open book exam, you know what I'm talking about. The teacher says, here's the questions, here's your book, or have your book with you. You can use it all you want to answer the questions, right? This is the same idea. I'm giving it the book for it to answer the questions, just so I don't have to read the book to get the questions. All right, so here we go. Let's extract out into a template over here, into a file, a question template.st, and st is not small talk, that is string template. I'm going to say you are a helpful assistant. Anybody's ever worked with creating these prompts knows that's the first thing you're required to write. Not really, but that's what everybody does. Answering questions about a game called Game. Okay? The rules are below under the rules section. Here's the question. I'm probably overstating this a little bit, but here's the thing about this. Everybody ever heard of this new and exciting career path you could take called being a prompt engineer? How many of you are parents of a teenager? You're already good at this, because you don't, when you're telling your teenager what to do, you tell them, pick your clothes up off the floor. What you meant by that is pick your clothes up off the floor, take them to the laundry, and start the wash. That's what you meant. You said pick your clothes up off the floor. So they put them on their bed. And so you think to yourself, okay, my bad, I should have been more clear. So you say, pick your clothes up off the floor, do not put them on their bed. So they put them on the dresser. See, that's the thing about prompt engineering. You have to be very explicit about what you want, and also it's not as good to tell it what you don't want, it's good to tell it what you do want. That's very important with prompt engineering. So I'm being very clear about this. So I'm going to put in the rules here, and the rules are going to be in a little placeholder called rules. I'm being very explicit and telling you what to do. Okay, so now over here, I am going to say, well, actually, I need to go do the same kind of thing I did up there. I'm going to say at value, class path, slash, and what did I call it? Question template.st. No, not stg, st. Come on, why you keep putting a g back? Thank you. Stop it. Yeah, question template. Okay, cool. So I'm loading that up into a resource, and I'm going to say new prompt template can work with me here. Question template. And I love how Copilot thinks it knows what it's doing. That's pretty awesome. So prompt template. I'm just going to call it template for short. A lot less typing. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to say, all right, template. There's several methods I can call here. I can call create, and it's going to give me a prompt object. I can call render, and it's going to give me a string. I'm going to go with the create one. I'm going to say create, and I'm going to give it a map of, and I got some things I got to put in there. Like the game's name is Burger Battle. Now, normally, the reason I even bothered putting that in there is because in a bigger app, I might have other games as well, and I want to make sure it's clear about which game it's answering questions about, and it's not answering questions about Carcassonne or something like that. All right? So, map of game. We're going to call that good for now while I do a little reformatting here, just to make it a little bit easier to read. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to put in there, the rules are going to be in BB rule string. That's good. And I want the question to be in question. Okay? And I probably need one more of those, and I'm going to take that and put that into a prompt, and we should be good to go. So now I have a prompt ready. I'm going to say call, but I'm not going to pass it the question. I'm going to pass it that entire prompt. And just for grins, just so we can see what it looks like later on, I'm going to share out the prompt so we can see what the prompt actually looks like when it's filled in. But here's the problem. Chat client no longer responds with a string because I'm no longer passing in a string. I'm passing in a prompt. It's going to return a response. So I'm going to have a chat response object. So I'm going to do this. Oops. Answer text, blah, blah, blah. There we go. Okay. We'll come back and fill that in a minute. There's my chat response. My answer text is going to be answer text equal response dot, not any of that stuff. That's all wrong. Get result dot get output dot get content. There we go. But before we do that, the reason I even wanted to go that far is I wanted to also dig something else out of here while we're there. I'm doing horribly on time. So it's going to force me to do kind of slam a few things together. I'm going to say get usage dot get prompt tokens. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to do the same thing with response tokens, but they're not called response tokens. They're called gen tokens or generation tokens. And I'm going to make that. I'm going to rename this to gen tokens. Well, that's fine, whatever. And I'm going to stare out those just so we can see what they look like. So prompt tokens, generation tokens, and let's see what happens. I don't know if I did anything wrong, but we're going to find out really soon. All right, I think it's restarted. Let's go ask a question about Burger Battle. I'm going to ask it again. What does the Burger Bomb card do? Burger Bomb card in Burger Battle allows you to blow up another player's burger by sending their ingredients to the graveyard. I know this worked because graveyard is a term in Burger Battle that refers to the discard pile. It can be powerful to hinder whatever else. Now, let's ask it a really hard question. Does the burger force field protect against Burger Bomb? The burger force field does protect against the Burger Bomb, and you can read all about the game there. Okay, now let's ask it another question. Does it protect against the burger apocalypse? The burger force field does not protect against the burger apocalypse. Now, here's what's interesting about this game. I've been playing this game since 2019. My family loves this game. We play it a lot. I have 3 copies of it. I'm not lying to you. I have backups in case it ever gets destroyed. And also so I can carry one with me when I travel so my family can still play when I'm gone. So we have copies of this, right? I should be familiar with this game. I actually thought that the burger force field protected against burger apocalypse. When I was first doing this work with Spring AI here several months ago, I asked the same question and it told me that answer. And I'm like, yeah, it's wrong. And then I went back and read the rules and no, it's right. I had never read the rules right. Spring AI, or actually more accurately, OpenAI knew the correct answer. I was wrong. It's pretty awesome. We went from making up crap to being better than I am at this, right? So that's pretty cool. It's going to take my job now as a burger battle rules master. I should be concerned. But let me go ahead and answer this question real quick. It's coming from the rules section. It's not coming from the LLM. LLM knows nothing about burger battle. LLM was never trained on burger battle. I can absolutely show. That's the next thing I was going to show. In fact, we're running horribly short on time, so I'm going to try to zoom through a few things real quick. But yeah, you can see that the entire prompt was started somewhere up here. And actually, I did this a few times. So let's go to the top and see if I can find the first time. So there it is, prompt. And you can see that the prompt has all these messages. We could talk a little bit later if we had more time about user messages, system messages, assistant messages, but we don't have time for that. But we have the user messages. You are a helpful assistant answering, and this is kind of a lie. I'm using a user message incorrectly here because by default it picks user message. A lot of this should be a system message, but you are a helpful assistant, blah, 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 answering questions about a game called Burger Battle. You can see it plugged in the name Burger Battle there. It plugged in the question here. It plugged in the rules below it. Now, here's the thing about that. I don't have time to go into RAG like I wanted to. I really wanted to. I seriously did want to, but I'm running short on time. So what I'm going to do instead, well, before we do that, let me show you the token counts. And you can, because the LLM doesn't learn anything. The LLM has been trained. That's what the PT and GPT stands for. It's pre-trained. It's trained. It's not going to be trained again until they train it. So by asking any questions or sending any rules to it, the model doesn't learn anything. And so I have to keep sending those rules every single time. Otherwise, if I ask it another question without sending the rules, it's not going to know again. It's stateless. Yeah, so the prompt templates, it cost me 1,482 prompt templates, which are the things that I sent in. That includes the rules and everything else. It cost me 63 tokens, or prompt tokens, or generation tokens. You add all that up, that determines, among other things, how much this request cost. I'm looking at that. It's probably costing me less than a penny. It's really cheap. Okay, it really is cheap. Well, yeah, it's a little bit more with GPT-4. Yes, you're right. It would definitely, if I used a different LLM, the counts would vary on the results for sure. But the templates generally work well, although some folks really like you to put XML in their prompts for weird, stupid reasons I don't understand. But yeah, for the most part, you can get away with basically this will work the same. Again, there's a site called Prompt Engineering or something. I can't remember what it is. That has some really good guides on this, and if there is anything specific to a specific LLM, they cover it. So.
But it's not supported by it doesn't go. My question is the framework going behind the scenes, and when you use this.
The framework is not manipulating it at all. No, it's not doing anything with your prompt. You're in charge of your prompt. Maybe someday there'll be some more clever stuff in there to help you with that, but you're in charge of your prompt. I have one more question, and I got to move on so we can finish. Yes. Yes, that's what output parsers do. I was hoping to cover that. I'm out of time. I can't cover that. But it does cover it really nicely. But before we move on, before we have to get out of here, because there is another talk. Otherwise, I'd be happy to go longer and into the break, but there is no break, and so I can't. So let's just zoom through this. We talked a little bit about that. Let's go into RAG. What RAG would do is essentially what I just did. The only difference is that I would take that document, I would throw it into a vector store, And chances are, if the document's big enough, and the burger battle rules are fairly small, so this really doesn't matter much. But if the document's big enough, the document's going to get cut up into little pieces, little sub-documents. How big they are kind of depends on what strategy you use. They're going to write those into the vector store, and then you're going to ask the question. The first thing you're going to do is ask the vector store your question. It's going to go find the matching little sub-documents that match that question. It's going to return the top 2, 3, 4, however many you asked for. It's going to come back with those, and that's what you're going to send in your request. So, for example, I've done this with the 1993. That's crazy. The 2023 NFL rule book, which is several hundred pages long. It got chopped up into, I can't remember how many pieces, but it got chopped up into all these pieces. I threw that into a vector store. I asked questions about NFL rules, like, what's a two-point conversion, or what's a safety, things like that. And it was happy to come back with the answer, because what it did is it went to the vector store, it asked that question first, it came back with the documents that it thinks matches that question, puts those in the context, and then the LLM took those. It's like giving it the open book exam, but instead of giving it the entire book, you're tearing out the pages that matter, and you're only giving it those pages. So it's kind of like that. And it's actually relatively simple to do. If you want to see an example of it, I'll show you where you can get one in just a second. Conversational RAG is very similar to that, but you just have history with it. You remember everything that the user and the assistant has said up to that point, and you consider that, and you throw that in along with that as additional context. But what's also kind of cool is, and LangChain does this really well. Spring AI doesn't yet do it that well, but I've built something on top of Spring AI that does. It doesn't send the entire conversation back. It actually filters the conversation down into the most relevant parts of the conversation for the question being asked, so that you're not considering the entire conversation to answer that question. Vector stores, they're basically based on this thing called cosine similarity, which is sort of this thing here, and everybody probably understands this, so I don't need to talk about it anymore. I actually do kind of understand it, but you don't have to worry about it. It is all handled for you. You don't have to. It still works even if you don't know how to do the math. All right, so I said we have time for another demo, but it's not. We got to get out of here. So let's talk about the other ones. There's other libraries out there. I should have not done that. Well, come on, catch your breath. What about these other things? There's other libraries out there: LangChain, Llama Index, Semantic Kernel, LangChain for J. They're all great. I've actually used all of these to some degree, and I like them all. But obviously, I'm a Spring developer, and so my mind goes to Spring. Spring AI, would I argue that these are better than Spring AI? In some ways, I would argue that they're better than Spring AI. However, Spring AI is growing up. It's still evolving, and I believe, and I've been told this by the project leader, Mark. He told me this, and I think it was kind of a quick, off-the-cuff answer he gave me, but I believe what he says. Spring's going to be better. It's not there yet, but it's growing up. It's getting better. And the main thing that Spring's trying to do, that the Spring AI team is trying to do, is not necessarily solve all the problems on day one, but build a strong foundation for 1.0, and then we'll build on top of that later. And you can already do some really awesome things with Spring AI, even if it doesn't do the awesome and the miraculous stuff yet. It's already awesome and miraculous, but even the greater stuff, it's going to get there eventually. Image and other generation, it does do image generation. It's pretty awesome. This code right here more or less does it. Now, this may be a little outdated, but I have written this code before, and I've run this code, and I had it generate a picture of dogs playing poker. It was awesome. I also had it generate a picture of dogs playing Catan. That was even more fun. I'm sorry? Because it doesn't know about the burger game. It would probably make up something that looks nothing like the burger game, but yeah. But regardless, it does a good job. It does a good job at generating these images, and it works with various models for doing that. It works with some of the OpenAI models. It works with Stability and some other stuff. Now, to get the code, you can get the code. It is going to be available. If you go to my GitHub URL, go to github.com/habooma/springAI-examples. The code for this talk is not out there, but code like what's in this talk is out there, plus a bunch of other stuff you've never seen before. Or that same repository has a Spring CLI project catalog in it. So you can follow these 3 lines here. Take your pictures now. You can follow these 3 lines here. The first line adds the project catalog to Spring CLI. The second one, just if you get a project list, it'll list it and you kind of verify that they're there. And then you can use the Spring Boot New and give it the type of project you want. In this case, it's the Spring AI RAG example, and it'll give you a RAG example. Now, just to be clear, the Spring CLI is not the same thing as the Spring Boot CLI. If you Google Spring CLI, you're going to see links to Spring Boot CLI. They are different things. Go find the one that's called Spring CLI that has these commands on it, and that's the one you want, okay? And with that said, I am out of time. I wish I could talk about this for 3 or 4 or 5 more days, but I can't. So thank you very much. Check it out.